We're now moving into the bottom of the iceberg, and this is where stuff starts to get a bit more obscure and a bit creepy too. We'll start with the skyscraper taking place outside of Evershade Valley, and I also think it takes place outside of wherever the last resort is, and here's why. The game lists the skyscraper ghost and the Evershade Valley ghost as different, obviously just for convenience, but also because I think it takes place in a different spot. See, we don't know if the Dark Moon has control over the skyscraper because it's not in the main game and it's not required to beat the main story. However, something that's important to note is that the ghosts there are still evil. So maybe the ghosts are just naturally evil outside of Evershade Valley, and they don't have the pupils, and even after you beat the main story, they don't go back to normal either. So that's why I think that Evershade Valley and Skyscraper are in different places. Sneakers are based off Purple Bashers. Purple Bashers were cut ghosts in the first game. I'm not really sure what they were about, but they were purple ghosts that would scare you. And you can also describe the sneakers as like that too, so who knows, maybe they were based off them. The mission/ghost names differ in North America versus Europe. Now, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon is called Luigi's Mansion 2 outside of North America, but there are other interesting things as well. C2 Underground Expedition is called Underground Trek outside of North America. The mission C4 Play Catch is Ghosty in the middle. F1 it was King Boo's Illusion. It's now called Shatter the Illusion, and that was the final mission. And Poltergeist, a pretty rare ghost in the game, are called Boffins, and the Shrewd Possessor ghost that appeared in Secret Mine is called the Scornful Possessor. So I'm glad they still kept the naming scheme. So yeah, that's just a little interesting name change. Unused Rumpus Room song. There was an unused song in the Rumpus Room, which is basically a room in the Haunted Towers, and it was like a little dollhouse room with a doll, and it played Ring Around the Rosie, a creepy remix of it, which is pretty interesting. I can understand why they cut it, but still, it would have been nice to have. Moving into Luigi's Mansion 3, King Boo's Gem is an anti-Dark Moon piece. See, this Dark Moon piece doesn't make the ghosts, doesn't give them pupils, and they don't act nice, but instead it makes them act evil. Either way, they don't have pupils, though, unlike the ghosts in Dark Moon, which I think is pretty interesting. And in the gallery, in the credits, we can see that King Boo is in the gallery, and he doesn't have his crown, but I do think it has sort of like a power over the ghost, like the Dark Moon piece. But maybe it has to do with who takes control of it, you know? Seeing as how the Dark Moon wasn't used for evil, but just for good. Morty created Godzilla in the Marioverse. So, I have no idea when the Marioverse takes place. It could take place in medieval times, seeing as how there are kingdoms and princesses, but it could also be modern, seeing as how we have stuff like a Godzilla movie. But Morty did make a Godzilla movie with a goob, playing the role of Godzilla, and the heroes playing the role of Luigi and Luigi, which is canonical in 3. So if we assume that this movie takes place in 2019, the same year Luigi's Mansion 3 came out, then that means that the Mario universe takes place during here too? Well, maybe, but I'm not too sure. Either way, I'm pretty sure that Morty created this movie. Lunaman Greeny Coffee Blend. So, for a little promo for Luigi's Mansion 3, Nintendo released EGAD's research journal. It explains some parts of the prologue of Luigi's Mansion 3, but it's mainly the Luigi, and it's a little story Nintendo wrote about how EGAD created Luigi before Luigi's Mansion 3. And something interesting in it is that he drank a coffee called Lunaman Greeny Coffee Blend. And I don't know if this comes from the material that make Ghost, but it is called Greeny, so I wonder if it comes from there. The Ripped Suites was supposed to have 40 rooms. So when you purchase the DLC in the game, like I already explained at the beginning of the Iceberg, you can see an image gallery, and there's a bunch of cool cut content, but one thing that really intrigued me is there are 40 rooms in the Ripped Suites, and no other floor had this in the game. And I'm glad they didn't go with this, because this would have taken up a lot of development time, and as we know, the Ripped Suites is a pretty safe and boring floor. It isn't that interesting compared to the many other interesting floors in the game. Next up, the different props from all floors during King Boo's final phase. During the final phase of King Boo, you can see a huge painting as a portal, and you're on a timer, of course, but there are also a bunch of objects that float in the background that are easy to miss when you're taking down King Boo. Some of these are a steering wheel from the pirate ship from the Spectral Catch that float up. You can see some TVs from the Paranormal Productions floor. You can see some sarcophagus from the Tomb Suites floor. Just some pretty interesting stuff, and it's easy to miss, but it is pretty cool. The Hammer Eats a Hard Hat. So the Hammer Ghosts, the big red angry tough guys, they eat a hard hat at the end of the game, and it's an easy to miss detail because it's right before the credits roll. But I just thought this was funny and a nice inclusion, since after eating the hard hat, after Egad gives the ghosts who are now friendly the hard hats, the Slinker Ghost sees the Hammer Ghost eat the hard hat, and he looks very disappointed. It's funny. It was a stupid thing. I don't know why I included it, but it was funny. It was initially impossible to capture Morty. So Morty wasn't able to be captured in the in the development process, but the developers eventually decided that the main reason to include this feature is because the players probably wanted a complete ghost gallery. Now, I don't know about you, but unless you're going for 100%, I never capture Morty, because he's a nice dude, you know? Well, that's about it for this part. There are 2 parts left in the Iceberg, so check out on that next time. See ya.